of Management Studies, IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course Mmpc 017 Advanced Strategic Management for MBA program. Presenting Block 4 Strategic Enablers, Unit 12 Innovation Part 2.
Characteristics of innovative organizations. Despite the interest in the field of innovation, much of the research evidence concerning management practices about innovation cultures and creative climate remains unsystematic and anecdotal. As mentioned earlier, the importance of culture has been emphasized by organizational theorists such as Burns and Stocker 1961. Who present a case for organic structures as opposed to mechanic structures. In popular literature, Peters and Waterman 1982 similarly present arguments which suggest that in order to facilitate innovation, work environments must be simultaneously tight and loose. Bergman and Sales 1986 highlight the dependency of innovation with the development and maintenance of an appropriate context within which innovation can occur. Judge 1997 in presenting findings from a study of R&D units compare cultures and climates between innovative and less innovative firms and argue that the key distinguishing factors between innovative and less innovative firms is the ability of management to create a sense of community in the workplace. Highly innovative companies behave as focused communities, whereas less innovative companies' units behave more like traditional bureaucratic departments. They suggest 4 managerial practices that influence the making of such goal-directed communities. Balanced autonomy. Autonomy is defined as having control over means as well as the ends of one's work. This concept appears to be one of central importance. There are 2 types of autonomy. Strategic autonomy, the freedom to set one's own agenda. Operational autonomy, the freedom to attack a problem once it has been set by the organization in ways that are determined by the individual self. Operational autonomy encourages a sense of the individual and promotes entrepreneurial spirit, whereas strategic autonomy is more to do with the level of alignment with organizational goals. It appears that firms that are most innovative emphasize operational autonomy but retain strategic autonomy for top management. Top management appears to specify ultimate goals to be attained but thereafter provide freedom to allow individuals to be creative in the ways they achieve goals. Giving strategic autonomy in the sense of allowing individuals a large degree of freedom to determine their destiny ultimately leads to less innovation. The results of strategic autonomy are an absence of guidelines and focus in effort. In contrast, having too little operational autonomy also has the effect of creating imbalance. Here, the roadmaps become too rigidly specified and control drives out innovative flair, leading eventually to bureaucratic atmospheres. What works best is a balance between operational and strategic autonomy. Personalized recognition. Rewarding individuals for their contribution to the organization is widely used by corporations. However, while recognition can take many forms, there is a common distinction. Rewards can be either extrinsic or intrinsic. Extrinsic rewards are things such as pay increases, bonuses and shares, and stock options. Intrinsic rewards are those that are based on internal feelings of accomplishment by the recipient. For example, being personally thanked by the CEO or being recognized by the peer group, being awarded an award or trophy. Innovative companies appear to rely heavily on personalized intrinsic awards, both for individuals as well as groups. Less innovative companies tend to place almost exclusive emphasis on extrinsic awards. It appears that when individuals are motivated more by intrinsic desires than extrinsic desires, then there is greater creative thought and action. Nevertheless, it has to be stated that extrinsic rewards have to be present at a base level in order to ensure that individuals are at least comfortable with their salary. Beyond the base salary thresholds, it appears that innovation is primarily driven by self esteem level rather than external monetary rewards. It appears that extrinsic rewards often yield only temporary compliance. Extrinsic rewards promote competitive behaviors, which disrupt workplace relationships, inhibit openness and learning, discourage risk taking, and can effectively undermine interest in work itself. When extrinsic rewards are used, individuals tend to channel their energies in trying to get the extrinsic reward rather than unleash their creative potential. Integrated socio-technical system. Highly innovative companies appears to place equal emphasis on the technical side as well as the social side of the organization. In other words, they look to nurture not only technical abilities and expertise but also promote a sense of sharing and togetherness. Fostering group cohesiveness requires paying attention to the recruitment process to ensure social fit beyond technical expertise and also about carefully integrating new individuals through a well-designed socialization program. Less innovative firms, on the other hand, appears to be more concerned with explicit, aggressive individual goals. Less innovative firms tend to create environments of independence, whereas innovative ones create environments of cooperation. Highly innovative companies also appear to place much more reasonable goal expectations and try not to overload individuals with projects. The prevalent belief being that too many projects spread effort too thinly, leading individuals to step from the surface of one to the next. These conditions create time pressures which militate strongly against innovativeness. Continuity of slack. Slack is the cushion of resources which allows an organization to adapt to internal and external pressures. Slack has been correlated positively to innovation. Judge 1997 note that it is not just the existence of slack but also the existence of slack over time that appears to have positive impact upon innovation. They find less innovative firms have slack, but these firms appear to have experienced significant disruptions or discontinuities of slack in their past or were expecting disruptions in the future. Therefore, innovativeness seems to be linked with both experience and expectation of slack resources. It can be hypothesized that slack and future expectations of uninterrupted slack provide scope for the organization and its members to take risk that they would not take under conditions of no slack or interruptions in slack. Organizationally, this would appear to indicate the need for generating a baseline stock of slack in a variety of critical resources such as time and seed funding for new projects. The individual and innovation culture. People play a role in organizational culture. Organizations need to consider the type of employees that can most effectively drive innovation. From a diverse range of research, psychology to management, it has been found that a core of reasonably stable personality traits characterizes creative individuals. A selected few of these are high evaluation of aesthetic qualities in experience, broad interests, attraction to complexity, high energy, independence of judgment, intuition, self-confidence, ability to accommodate opposites, firm sense of self as creative, persistence, curiosity, energy, intellectual honesty, internal locus of control, which is reflective or introspective. Although there appears to be general agreement that personality is related to creativity, attempts to try and use this inventory type of approach in an organizational setting as predictor of creative accomplishments is fraught with dangers and is hardly likely to be any more useful than attempts at picking good leaders through the use of trait theory approaches. Nevertheless, it does highlight the need to focus on individual actors and to try and nurture such characteristics or at least bring them out if necessary in an organizational setting. Cognitive factors and innovation. Cognitive factors also appear to be associated with the ability to innovate. Research appears to indicate that a number of cognitive factors are associated with creativity. For example, medical psychology indicates differences in cognitive processing, ascribing left cerebral cortex to rational thinking and the right brain to intuition. Cognitive parameters affecting idea production are associative fluency, fluency of expression, figural fluency, ideational fluency, speech fluency, word fluency, practical ideational fluency, originality, fluency, flexibility. Personal motivational factors affecting innovation. At the individual level, numerous motivation related factors have been identified as drivers of creative production. The key ones are presented: intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is a key driver of creativity. In fact, extrinsic interventions such as rewards and evaluations appear to adversely affect innovation motivation because they appear to redirect attention from experimenting to following rules or technicalities of performing a specific task. Furthermore, apprehension about evaluation appears to divert attention away from the innovation because individuals become reluctant to take risks since these risks may be negatively evaluated. On the contrary, in order to be creative, individuals need freedom to take risks, play with ideas, and expand the range of considerations from which solutions may emerge. Challenging individuals. Open-ended, non-structured tasks endanger higher creativity than narrow jobs. This occurs by virtue of the fact that people respond positively when they are challenged and provided sufficient scope to generate novel solutions. It appears that it is not the individual who lacks creative potential, but it is the organizational expectations that exert a primary debilitating effect upon the individual's inclination to innovate. Skills and knowledge. Creativity is affected by relevant skills such as expertise, technical skills, talent, etc. However, such domain-related skills can have both positive as well as negative consequences. Positively, knowledge enhances the possibility of creating new understanding. Negatively, high domain relevant skills may narrow the search heuristic to learned routines and thereby constrain fundamentally new perspectives. This can lead to functional fixedness. At a more macro level, Schneider, 1996, suggests that organizations may attract the select persons with matching styles. Organizational culture, as well as other aspects of the organization, may be difficult to change because people who are attracted to the organization may be resistant to the accepting new cognitive styles. When a change is forced, those persons attracted by the old organization may leave because they no longer match the newly accepted cognitive style. Among other things, this culture cognitive style match suggests that organizational conditions, including training programs supportive of creativity, will be effective only to the extent that the potential and current organizational members know of and prefer these conditions. Fostering creativity and the creative process. Good problem solving occurs when managers have many viable creative alternatives to consider. To inspire employees to approach problems creatively and to nurture a creative environment, organizations follow three general approaches. These include hiring creative individuals, applying specific creativity enhancement techniques, and developing a creative organization. Creative behavior is defined as production ideas that are both new and useful. Creative ability is the ability to produce ideas that are both new and useful. These definitions may seem constraining since the usefulness of some truly creative alternative might not be immediately evident. One scholar has addressed this dilemma by differentiating between originality and creativity. Both motivation and a proper setting may be necessary if innate creative ability is to blossom into creative output. Creativity involves more than the sudden moment of inspiration in which an idea suddenly flashes in the brain. Preparation involves gathering, sorting, and integrating information and other materials to provide a solid base for a later breakthrough. The discoveries of penicillin, the benzene ring, or gravity, while each involved a moment of insight, would have been impossible without a firm grasp of related information. During the incubation stage, the mind is not consciously focused on the problem. The individual may be relaxed, asleep, reflective, or otherwise involved. The insight, which is eureka stage, is the familiar sudden moment of inspiration. While this is what we often think of as creativity, it is only one step in the creative process. Finally, verification is necessary. Here, the individual carries out the course involved in carefully checking facts to support the insight, carrying out research to determine that the DNA molecule is in fact a double helix or that a meteorite did really create a dust cloud that led to the extinction of the dinosaurs. This process further supports the contention that creativity does not just happen. It is a thorough and often painstaking activity. Techniques for enhancing creativity. A wide variety of popular techniques have been developed to enhance creativity as described in this section. Gordon technique. William J. Gordon worked with creative thinking groups and had a creative variety of other pursuits. He was concerned that people, when asked to come up with a creative new idea, would instead incrementalize. That is, they would take an available alternative and improve it bit by bit. While this might lead to marginally better alternatives, the alternatives probably would not be real breakthrough. Gordon decided that one way to avoid this problem would be simply not to tell people what they were inventing. Thus, the Gordon technique uses an initial focus on function. Rather than being told to build a better mousetrap, the group might first be told that the focus was capturing. Instead of the group being instructed to design an improved knife, the function could be given as severing. Synectics. Gordon also developed a well-known technique called synectics. Synectics means the joining of apparently unrelated elements. First, very different sorts of people are put together in synectics groups in order to get a real diversity of perspectives. Second, synectics relies heavily on the use of analogies. Synectics techniques have been widely adopted by both businesses and educational institutions. 3 synectics tools according to Gordon are direct analogy, personal analogy, and fantasy analogy. Direct analogy. This involves looking for parallel facts, knowledge, or technology in a different domain from the one being worked on. For instance, can we think of anything similar that occurs in nature? Now, personal analogy. With this approach, Synectics group members try to identify psychologically with key parts of the problem. In one case, for example, the group was asked to design a mechanism that would run a shaft turning at 400 to 4000 rpm so that the power takeoff end of the shaft would turn at a constant 400 rpm. To address this question, members of the group metaphorically entered the box and tried to use their bodies to attain the required speed without undue friction. Now, fantasy analogy. Sigmund Freud saw creativity as the fulfillment of a wish or fantasy. Fantasy analogy asks, how in many wildest dreams can I make this happen? Gordon gives the example of a synectic group with the task of inventing a vapor-proof closure for spacesuits. Their solution was a spring mechanism based on the fantasy analogy of rows of trained insects clasping claws to hold shut the closure. There is more to synectics than just the use of analogy. The technique follows a structure problem-solving sequence in which a client and other participants interact to develop a workable solution to the client's problem. For instance, after the problem has been introduced and discussed, there is a springboard stage in which the problem is opened up by asking the client to convert concerns, opinions, and desires into statements such as I wish or how to. Later, after an initial idea has been developed and defined, an itemized response stage requires the client to think of three useful aspects or advantages of the idea and to generate key concerns. Still later, after the group works to modify the suggestion to overcome these concerns, the possible solution is checked for elements of newness and feasibility and whether there is sufficient commitment to the solution to take additional steps. Finally, the client lists actions to be taken to implement the solution, including timing and the personnel to be used. Betsy means Vice President and Director Product Management for the Values Product Group of Citibank regularly uses analogies to name a new product. She first brainstorms with the group to come up with a new fraction of an idea and then builds on it by bringing together ideas from unrelated disciplines. Through her efforts, Means in a single year signed up more than 2 million new customers for Citibank's Visa and MasterCard. Idea checklists. Several idea checklists have been developed to enhance creativity. These involve asking a series of questions about how we might use something that we already have. For example, one checklist of idea spurring questions is called SCAMPER, which is substitute, combine, adapt, modify, or magnify. Put to other uses. Eliminate or reduce. Reverse or rearrange. Here's an example of adapting. Clarence Birdseye worked as a fur trader in Labrador before World War I. He noted that Inuit preserved fish by quick freezing and that the fish, when thawed, were flaky and moist. Birdseye adapted this process to make quick frozen food available to the general public. This replaced the old slow freeze process that left food dry and tasteless. The huge success of quick frozen food led to the creation of General Foods. Kichiro Toyoda, the founder of Toyota, sought ways to eliminate large inventories and the need for warehouse. American supermarkets fascinated him and he noted that they require vast amounts of food that can be stored on site because of spoilage and space considerations. When supplies run low, the staff contacts the appropriate supplier and items arrive just in time. Toyota adopted this concept and streamlined its operation, eliminating waste and warehouses and reducing costs dramatically. Toyota's just-in-time approach gave it a huge competitive edge. Just-in-time is now being adopted worldwide. George Washington Carver asked the question, how can peanuts be put to other uses? And came up with over 300 applications. Many creative ideas have resulted from asking how waste products could be put to other uses. Rubber bands are made from surgical tubing, garbage is compressed into construction blocks, petrochemical waste is sold as silly putty. The Goodyear Tire Company has a pollution-free heating plant in Michigan that uses discarded tires as its only fuel. Perhaps the best-known listing technique is the 73 idea spurring questions devised by Osborne. This checklist can be applied to any alternative. Here are some of the questions. First, put to other uses. New ways to use as is. Other uses if modified. Second, adapt. What else is like it? What other ideas does this suggest? Does past offer parallel? What could I copy? Whom could I emulate? Third, minify. What to subtract? Smaller, condensed, miniature, lower, shorter, lighter, omit, streamline, split up, understate. Fourth, substitute. Who else instead? What else instead? Other ingredient, other material, other process, other power, other place, other approach, other tone of voice. Fifth, rearrange, interchange components, other pattern, other layout, other sequence, transpose cause and effect, change pace, change schedule. Sixth, combine. How about a blend and alloy and assortment and assemble? Combine units, combine purposes, combine appeals, combine ideas. Now, attribute listing. According to the developer of attribute listing, Robert Crawford, each time we take a step, we do it by changing an attribute or a quality of something, or else by applying that same quality or attribute to some other things. There are two forms of attribute listing: attribute modifying and attribute transferring. With attribute modifying, the main attribute of the problem object is listed. Then ways to improve each attribute are listed. For instance, the technique might be used to concentrate on ways to improve the running shoe attributes of weight, stability, cushioning, and durability. Attribute transferring is similar to direct analogy in synectics. Attributes from one thing are transferred to another. Checkerboard method. The checkerboard method, also called morphological analysis, is an extension of attribute modifying. Specific ideas for one attribute or problem dimension are listed along one axis of a matrix. Ideas for a second attribute are listed along the other axis. If desired, a third axis and attribute can be added. The cells of the matrix then provide idea combinations. For instance, the axis for a vehicle might be type of energy source, which example are rollers, air, water, rails, and type of vehicle, example cart, chair, sling, bed. The benefit of the checkerboard method of analysis is that it makes us aware of all possible combinations of the attributes. Many, of course, will prove to be little value, but others may be worthwhile. Like other creativity enhancement techniques, the checkerboard method makes us view the world from a different perspective. It is very useful for producing large numbers of new ideas. Retroduction. We are the slaves of our assumptions. They dictate the way we behave. Retroduction involves changing an assumption. This may serve two purposes. First, our assumptions may be wrong. Second, even if our assumptions are correct, we may gain valuable new perspectives from looking at things from a different angle. Albert Einstein, for instance, revised Isaac Newton's assumption that space is flat to the assumption that space is curved, and developed a new perspective on time and space. As a simple example of the power of assumptions, consider paper clips, the subject. The standard gem paper clip, invented in 1899, accounts for most of the 20 billion paper clips sold every year. More than 100 alternative designs have patent, varying in size, material, and shape. Ring clips, owl clips, arrowhead clips, butterfly clips, and many others have been offered, and their inventors present compelling cases for their superiority. Nevertheless, they haven't made a noticeable dent in gems' market superiority. The reason is that inventors share a common and incorrect assumption that paper clips are used to clip sheets of paper. In fact, research shows that only 20% of paper clips are used to hold papers. The rest are twisted or broken by people during phone conversations, unwound to clean pipes, nails, or ears, used to reinforce eyeglasses, or put to other creative uses. The gem, unlike its competitors, can easily be taken apart and reshaped. One retroduction technique says, suppose X were Y. For instance, suppose custodians were chief executives. Another technique pairs apparently distinct concepts such as power and satisfaction, or perception and structure, and sees what new alternatives might be suggested. Yet another asks, what if? For example, what if employees could design their own jobs? What if we viewed customers as owners of the firm? One individual who applied these retroduction techniques generated such questions as, what are the structural irregularities of semiconductors? And can arteries have rashes? Each of these questions is now the subject of study and debate. The first among physicists and the second among researchers and disease processors, Henry Ford questioned the practice of moving workers to material, asking, what if we moved the work to the people? This questioning led to the birth of the assembly line. Retroduction offers new perspectives and helps free people from mental ruts. Here's a final example. For years, bankers assumed that customers preferred human tellers. In the early 1980s, Citibank felt that installing automated tellers would help it cut costs. However, since Citibank executives assumed people would prefer not to use machines, they reserved human tellers for people with large accounts and relegated smaller depositors to the machines. The machines proved unpopular and Citibank stopped using them, taking the failure as proof that its assumptions was correct. Later, another banker challenged this assumption. He asked, in effect, what if people really like to use automatic teller? What if the Citibank customers who used the machines simply resented being treated as second-class citizens? He brought back the automatic tellers with no classic distinction, and they were an immediate success.
You were listening to the audiobook by the School of Management Studies IGNOU for MBA program. Course code Mmpc 016 International Business Management. Course Coordinator Professor G. Subayama. Voiceover by Chitra. Edited by Savita. Program assisted by Tarannum Jahan and Jagbandhu Jana. Program produced by Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center of Indira Gandhi National Open University.